Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our very last episode of season 3 of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series. And I'm really excited to be ending it with two of my dear friends and role models in the library world, Caroline and Becky. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, why don't we start just by introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about what you do.
So my name is Becky Calzada, and I am the District Library Coordinator in Leander ISD, which is northwest of Austin, Texas. We are a school district of about 42,000 plus students and growing. I've been in this position for, I think, nearly 10 years now, and in the school district for 23 years.
And I'm Carolyn Foote. I am the recently retired district librarian in Eanes ISD, where I was the director for 15 years and the high school librarian for 29. And I am now a freelance librarian and consulting.
I love it. That's great. Well, we're so happy to have you on. And I asked them to be on the podcast after I read an article, and we've all seen a lot about the banning of books. And this most recent article in EdSurge is called Librarians Fight Book Bans with Twitter Takeover. And Britton Follett in our summit on Saturday brought this article up, and we had a great conversation around it. And so I was really thankful that you both were going to be on the podcast. So why don't we kind of take a step back, and Becky, tell us what's happening. Tell us what's happening in Texas around banning books and how this has really now just spiraled across the United States.
So as far as books go, for us, it probably started about 2 years ago through a language arts adoption. So the entire state of Texas had a language arts adoption. And I think, well, what I know is in this last adoption, a lot of different companies offered opportunities to purchase classroom libraries. And of course, we know that best practice is, having books at the access point, and so in the classrooms and that kind of thing too. And I also know that our curriculum department adopted several books along with the classroom libraries to use as, book club books and that sort of thing too. And so there were some things that came up that were questionable and had to be re-vetted. At that time, not much had happened and wasn't really impacting the library because they really wanted to separate the two. But as of late, it's been kind of creeping into the library now. And I think a lot of it has to do with, parents not having, pretty fixed attitudes about what is appropriate and what is not. And so for us, it's been a lot of education of, what our policy is, what our process is, what that vetting process looks like. But we have, just like anybody else, have had parents coming to our school board meetings, reading snippets and piecing things together, parts of books, and taking things out of context, looking at our catalogs and that sort of thing, going to, campuses and that sort of thing, questioning things. So a lot of the questions have been around books that are diverse, specific topics, including like LGBTQIA topics, anything that they feel is just, questionable. I mean, they feel like it's just not appropriate. And so again, just trying to address one case at a time, obviously, but it's been a little crazy.
And I think it's all being impacted as well by the new laws that have been passed in several states that were initially a response to, more diverse curriculum, what they're calling CRT. A lot of us wouldn't call it that necessarily. And so some of the response in Texas and some other states is sort of evolving out of that law. which doesn't address the LGBTQ books at all. But I think that it created this sense of examination or parental impact on libraries, and it grew out of the diverse libraries that people were seeing, and you know, districts are having to grapple with that.
Mhm. Yeah, like just watching things unfold. I mean, what was it in Texas probably about a month ago when things really started getting heated, and just reading and the accusations, you know, towards librarians, it just hurts my heart, you know. And as a reader and as a librarian and as a mother who have had, you know, kids that have, you know, been young adults and is, you know, now my youngest one is a young adult. And I look at all these kids at, you know, my school in the middle of Iowa, you know, and how we need to really think about the needs of our kids. And it's interesting. This article is really great. And I've read a lot of things and have been watching what the two of you have been doing in response to this. And I mean, couldn't think of two better people to do that. But, you know, the big thing I think now too is like, now what, you know, and that's what I think a lot about when I think about my library and my kids and my readers. Like, what do we do as librarians? How do we, I guess, even have these conversations maybe before, you know, they come up within our building? I think that's the question that a lot of people have.
I think that was what you were mentioning about kids and families was really part of our concern. And some letters came out in Texas from a representative and the governor, and probably a lot of people have seen that already. But we felt like we wanted the public to know that there were many, many, many readers who supported students having access to books. And so we tried to make a small group of us, it's not just the two of us, there's a couple more people, decided we wanted to do something, and or a series of steps. And we started with this hashtag takeover that the article mentions in Texas, and which was Becky's idea after our initial meeting of what to do. But we really wanted to uplift positive literature, and we wanted to uplift the voices of librarians and English teachers and authors, and also give people hope that they weren't alone. And I think that's important. But Becky and I have done some workshops and a program for SLJ Summit on sort of what to do to be prepared, because this is atypical, but if people are prepared to face it and to have those conversations, it's really important. And Becky could speak to some of the things that we recommend that librarians do to be aware.
So when, you know, Carolyn speaks of that, I think it's remembering, you know, to be proactive versus reactive. And I know for us always as a district, our librarians have always had training around, you know, reconsideration, what that could look like, educating ourselves on selection policy. But one of the things that I see sometimes when I talk to people is, or librarians, some don't know if they have a selection policy or where it's located. We've even heard of cases where the school board doesn't even know where the selection policy is too. So, you know, one of the things that librarians can do is to find that selection policy, read it. I even say print it. I have a folder that I keep it in so that you can review it and make sure that you are well aware. Because if a parent asks, I mean, we want to be transparent. We're not trying to hide anything. So sharing, you know, well, here's how we vet our books. And but also, I think one of the other things that is a good thing to do is to look at your specific districts, you know, like mission and goals and any kind of specific initiatives. Like for us, we've got some core values that we've established as a district that are new. What are those natural intersections? that support the work that you're doing. Right now, we know that, when a parent typically comes in, they're emotional and that kind of thing. So any kind of, scenario prep training sort of things, it's easy for us to talk about it, but when you actually have a scenario that says, a parent comes and whatever, right? That that advanced prep and actually practicing with somebody else can be really helpful. So those kinds of things are useful, along with just coaching about how to have a conversation when somebody is in maybe perhaps an emotional state, and trying to get everybody to be calm and listening and being professional and that sort of thing too. I also tell people to just be mindful too of how they're framing conversations. It's so easy for us to get defensive because obviously it's personal to us. These are the books that we're trying to curate for our students. But instead of focusing on what we're not doing, what are you doing? That framing, that positivity of our goals are to have diverse collections because we want it to represent our schools. Whatever those connections are, I think is really key.
And I think that another thing that we recommended is perhaps even writing out a rationale for your programming, your displays, whatever, so that you can tie it to your mission statements and you've kind of got your wording together, so that if something comes up, you already have documents prepared to share with the principal, and you're not trying to craft them in the heat of the moment when you're already stressed out as well. And then, I always want to remind people to think of your stakeholders. Who in your school needs to know that you have a policy and that you have a form for concerns that parents might have about reviewing a material? Your English department, your team leaders, your grade level leaders, your principals, your curriculum team may not even be that familiar with it. So making sure all those stakeholders, including parent volunteers, who maybe don't need to know the exact policy, but maybe just need to know you have one and need to know what to do if an upset parent comes in or calls. So the more you can inform all these stakeholders ahead of time, the more they're prepared if someone catches them in the grocery store, as my district always talks about, or somewhere unawares, that they're just prepared to have the conversation.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I think that I'm sure that some people that are listening, they're probably thinking in their head, like, maybe like, do I have that? Do I have everything I need? Is there a place that people can go and see examples or look for things maybe that other districts? I mean, Becky, your district has done such an amazing job with your librarians, and Caroline too, even though you're retired. And so I think that would be, I know that during a conversation, even during the summit last weekend, we had some students that were school library students who were students actually of Joyce's. And so, they were talking about just even seeing, really good examples and being armed with that as they even go into like interview processes and things.
And, there's not really a clearinghouse right now for policies, but we have Padlets are being put together by Sue Kowalski, and we have started a group called At Freedom Fighters. It's FREADOM on Twitter, and so that we can disseminate resources like that and elevate them. And we're using the hashtag FREADOM to do that, so that people can follow that hashtag, and as things come out and materials make available or people pull collections together, that hashtag can become a common, or please, that it already is. So it's taking off. But you're right that those examples are really important for people to be able to see. And my suggestion is every school district somewhere on their webpage has their board listed, or their board of supervisors, and they have a web page, and going to that and looking under policies if you don't know where yours might be, and then locating it. Usually it's under instructional materials or instructional resources. Then that's a way to look at policies if you're just unaware of how to find them even.
And I would add for us, so we had a policy, but last summer our district, once everything kind of settled down and we didn't have any challenges in play, decided to redo their policy. And so we actually reached out to the Office of Intellectual Freedom to ask for about some sample policies, because what we were trying to do was separate library selection from the language arts, any kind of curriculum selection. And so they were very helpful in providing some mentor text from other districts across the country. And our school board and curriculum people at the district were able to, put together what they wanted to do. So I would definitely say that, the Office of Intellectual Freedom also has some resources that people could look at too. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And I clicked on in the article, the site and just the things that have already been curated. And so I'll make sure to share that too in the description of this podcast, because I think that's where a lot of people are at too. So it's just so helpful having this, and, even the best places and best libraries and best librarians are going to have things that come up in these conversations. And like we all said, to be proactive and transparent about our policies and how we select materials and just what we have in our libraries is just so important for us, and especially for our readers, for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add one thing, Shannon? I wanted to also say or share and remind everybody how important it is for us to stay connected. We've always, as librarians, known the power of a professional learning network, but now more than ever, that professional learning network is so critical. This sort of situation can be very upsetting, and it can be very emotional once, when you deal with, the ramifications and the implications of what's being asked of you. And if you're a singleton, because most librarians are singletons, and you don't have, say, maybe a district leader to support you, it's so critical, I think, to remind everybody to find a librarian to connect with and talk about it. I know for me, I've reached out to Carolyn several times and said, well, what am I missing? Or anybody else that, I feel like could give me that additional lens. But sometimes you just need that person to just talk to, and if it's cry or be mad with, but regardless, to just support you, because it can be a challenge. But what's also important is that, not one single person has all the answers. And so when you include other people, maybe that have gone through similar things, they can share with you, oh, here, you missed this piece, or don't forget to think about this. And I've had several library friends around me that have reached out and said, I want to talk to my district, can you look at these documents? And so absolutely, because I would have wanted that for me too. And so just remember, that you don't have to do this alone, to lean on your librarian network for support.
And I want to add that since Future Ready supports, superintendents and principals and teachers and so on, and you may have listeners from all those categories, just reminding all of them to reach out to their librarians and for us to work together on these challenges, because we are a little more practiced at it, perhaps, and know the policies better, and certainly know our collection of books and ebooks and programming and all of that. And so we really want to work as a team and collaborate. And that is partly why we started this group, to take some actions, was also as sort of a PLN that people could be a part of and reach out, find other people interested, and reach out to people who could support them.
Yeah, I love all that advice. And I really love, the community that we have as librarians, but it's great advice to have conversations with the other people, the leaders within your school, because I think that is going to make it better if things ever do come to you as a question, or others, that you'll be prepared. So just really great advice. Also, just to kind of wrap up, I would love for you guys to tell people where to find you online too.
Sure. I'm at Techno Library on Twitter, And my blog is Not So Distant Future, which I haven't written on in the distant recent. There's so much going on right now that it's been hard to encapsulate all of it and get it down. But that's my goal during Thanksgiving week, actually.
And you can find me on Twitter at BE Calzada, Calzada. And I have a blog, but a view from the shelves, but like Carolyn, I have not done anything lately. It's mostly about books because I love to read, but let me tell you, the reading's been taking a hit lately because it's not so much, I mean, I'm listening, but there's just a lot going on. And so I kind of need to get back to that.
Yeah, you guys have been busy. And so I'm just so thankful that you joined us, and it's so helpful even, to me, that I think about as I get ready to go to school today, just having those conversations, even with the people in my library in school, taking that step to do that. And so I'm really grateful that you shared all of this, and I'll make sure to share all the resources in the description so everyone can find it. And so thank you both, friends.
Thank you,
Shannon.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Follett for sponsoring our podcast, and we will see you in season 4. Thank you for joining us for the Future Ready Librarian podcast, Leading from the Library. I would like to also thank our sponsor, Follett Learning, for their amazing continued support.